What if the man on that porch never came to take Nancy? What if he came to be recorded? The ski mask, the wrong holster, the cheap backpack, the bumbling camera removal that any person with 2 hands could have done cleanly in 3 seconds. Every single detail of that porch appearance was built to look like someone it was not. And the question that nobody has asked directly until now is whether the person underneath all of that construction was performing, building a character, designing a red herring so precisely that investigators would spend months chasing the costume instead of the person wearing it. And whether every detail of that night, including the blood on that step, was part of the show. There is an analyst who has been breaking down this case frame by frame since the beginning. His name is Monk Intrigue. And what he identified in the latest breakdown of that doorbell footage is the kind of detail that once you see it, you cannot unsee. We are going to walk through his analysis carefully, build on it, and connect it to everything this series has been documenting about the night of February 1st. Because if he is right, if that porch was a performance, then this investigation has been studying a costume for 2 months, while the person inside it has been standing in plain sight.
Now, I also noticed something else that supports this theory, okay? Go watch it again. Whenever the perpetrator was facing the camera, which I'm sure he's well aware of, that this camera is recording him, this guy never blinks. He's like a wide-eyed deer in the headlights every time he is facing the camera. Now, once you watch this video again, I just showed you something that you just can't unsee. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say that for the entire duration that he did not blink, okay? I'm just saying that whenever he was facing the camera, he did not do so.
The observation you just heard from Monk Intrigue is one of the sharpest analytical points made about this case since the doorbell footage was first released. And it deserves to be examined precisely because it reframes everything. Start with the gun. The suspect is wearing a firearm in a non-standard holster position at the front center of his body. Not concealed, not tucked away, displayed, visible, pointing outward in a way that any passing neighbor, any police patrol, any person looking in his direction at 2 in the morning cannot miss. Now ask the operational question. Why would someone executing a targeted kidnapping of an 84-year-old woman, a woman who cannot fight back, who cannot hear without her hearing aids, who requires daily medication just to stay alive, why would that person display their weapon where every camera and every set of eyes can see it? The answer is, they would not. There is no tactical reason to expose a firearm during a targeted operation against a non-threatening victim. You keep it concealed, you keep it accessible but invisible, because a visible gun at 2 in the morning on a residential street is the single fastest way to draw attention you do not want. A neighbor, a patrol car, someone who cannot sleep and is standing at their window. You hide the gun. Every time. Without exception. Unless the gun is not there to be used. Unless the gun is there to be seen. And then the camera removal. Watch that footage again with fresh eyes. This is a person who has spent 3 weeks conducting surveillance on this property, who identified the camera positions, who knew which doors to prop and which flower pots to use, who planned an ingress and egress route through a dark house with enough precision that not a single object inside was disturbed. That level of planning and then, at the camera, bumbling finger movements, ineffective attempts, building what Monk precisely called a nest on a nest camera covered with foliage like a bird's nest. A person capable of everything else that happened that night could have removed that camera in 3 seconds. They did not remove it. They made a show of trying. Because they wanted it to be there. They wanted the footage. They wanted investigators to spend months analyzing a carefully constructed character. The wrong holster, the discount backpack, and the incompetent camera removal, while the actual person underneath all of it remained invisible. The costume was the point. The performance was the point. and the camera that he pretended to remove captured every second of it exactly as planned. An insider who is recognizable, someone known to the family, known to the neighborhood, known to the investigation, is going to construct their appearance with the specific goal of misdirection. Every detail of that porch appearance points away from an educated, methodical, familiar person and toward a bumbling criminal type that does not match the actual profile. The ski mask alters the face. The double layers alter the body. The wrong holster alters the behavioral profile. The cheap backpack alters the economic profile. Everything was constructed. And the construction itself is the evidence that whoever was under that costume knew exactly what investigators would be looking for. Now to the eyes. Because this is the detail that Monk Intrigue spent the most time on, and it is the one that changes how you look at that footage permanently. From the first day the doorbell footage was released, people said the same thing about the suspect's eyes. They looked feminine. They looked lifted. They looked perky in a way that felt inconsistent with everything else about that figure. That observation was made across comment sections, across social media, across every platform where people were analyzing the footage. But nobody asked the structural question. Why do eyes look lifted? What creates that specific visual effect on a face? And professional makeup artists have a tool for exactly this. Invisible transparent eyelid tape strips, used to lift the eyelid, create a wider, more open eye appearance, alter the natural shape of the eye without any surgical procedure. The effect is subtle. The tape is transparent. From a distance, particularly through the distorted wide-angle lens of a Nest doorbell camera, the result is eyes that look different from their natural resting state. Eyes that look perky. Eyes that look lifted, eyes that multiple independent observers described in exactly those terms without knowing why. And then there is the blinking. Watch the doorbell footage specifically during the moments the suspect is facing the camera directly. He does not blink, not once during those facing moments. A person wearing eyelid tape has a very specific reason to minimize blinking while being observed. Blinking under tape creates the risk of the tape shifting, loosening, or becoming visible at the corner of the eye. You keep blinking to a minimum when you are wearing something on your eyelid that you cannot afford to have noticed. The no-blink behavior is not nervousness. It is not the wide-eyed stare of someone surprised by a camera they noticed. It is the controlled behavior of someone managing a detail on their face that cannot be disturbed. The ski mask pulls the skin upward and creates distortion of its own. Add eyelid tape underneath. Add the wide-angle lens distortion of the Nest camera. Add double layers of clothing that alter the body silhouette. I add a gun displayed in a position that creates a specific criminal behavioral profile. And what you have is not a person who showed up in a disguise. You have a person who engineered an appearance, who thought through every visual detail that a camera would capture and constructed each one deliberately to point away from who they actually are. Everything can be engineered. Everything can be constructed. Everything can be altered and disguised and misdirected. Except the walk, the duck feet, the left leg hitch, the slight bow, the gait that a CIA operative said is the absolute hardest thing to work on. The one detail in 40 seconds of carefully staged footage that was never part of the costume. Because it cannot be. It is not a choice. It is a skeleton. And skeletons do not perform. If everything on that porch was staged, if the figure was performing for a camera he intended to leave in place, then something has to be said about what comes after that porch. Because a staged performance does not end at the door. It continues into every piece of evidence that was found at that scene the next morning. The blood on the front step. The detail that has anchored the entire public understanding of Nancy's exit from her home. The confirmation that she was carried out the front door. The forensic anchor that placed the exit point and the direction of movement. If the porch was a stage, then the blood is a prop, not spilled during a struggle. Not the result of an unplanned physical contact during a forced removal. Placed, a vial of Nancy's blood, blood that could have been collected earlier. A blood from a person whose medical history meant biological material was regularly available through her health care, carried in a pocket, and applied to a step at 2 in the morning to create the appearance of a specific exit route. That is not a comfortable thought. It is not a thought this video presents as conclusion. It is the thought that Monk Intrigue put on the table and that the analytical logic of a staged performance forces this community to sit with. Because if you accept the premise that the porch was a construction, that every detail was designed to be found and studied, then you cannot selectively exclude the blood from that construction. Either everything was staged, or the staging stopped at a point that nobody has defined or justified. And then there is the car. Of all the ring cameras and residential surveillance systems in the Catalina foothills, a neighborhood where investigators confirmed that weeks of footage from multiple cameras was recovered and reviewed, no publicly confirmed footage has been released showing Tommaso Cione's vehicle on the route from Annie's house to Nancy's home on the evening of January 31st. The FBI may have it. Pima County may have it. But the public absence of that footage, in a neighborhood that had cameras pointed at streets and driveways in every direction, is a detail that has not been explained. And one question that has been sitting in this case since the very beginning has never received a public answer. Was Annie and Tommaso's son home the night Nancy came to dinner? She was there for 4 hours, a family dinner on a Saturday evening. Yeah, the kind of ordinary family gathering that happens in every household. Was the son home? Was he present for any part of those 4 hours? Did he see anything? Did he hear anything? That question has never been asked publicly by anyone with the authority to demand an answer. And its absence from the public record is its own kind of answer. Monk Intrigue has been doing something with this case that most coverage has not. He has been watching the same 40 seconds of footage over and over again until he sees what is actually there rather than what the costume wants him to see. The gun that was never a weapon, the eyes that were lifted by design, the camera removal that was never meant to succeed. The walk that survived every other layer of the construction because it is the one layer that cannot be applied or removed. His analysis is not a verdict. It is a framework. A way of looking at that porch footage that treats the bumbling not as incompetence, but as intention. And once you look at it that way, the footage does not look the same anymore. The FBI inherited what Pima County processed. A crime scene described by the former Surgeon General of the United States as permanently corrupted. Evidence sent to a private lab in Florida instead of Quantico. A lead sheriff whose own deputies voted unanimously against him. And 40 seconds of doorbell footage that the entire country has been studying for 2 months. Footage that the person in it may have left behind on purpose. The FBI is working with what they were given. The question is whether what they were given was the truth or the performance of it. Share this video for Nancy, not for this channel. And every share keeps this case in front of someone who might know something. Every like tells the algorithm this case still matters. Subscribe so the next update reaches you the moment it breaks. Because the person responsible for what happened on February 1st designed every detail of that night to point investigators in the wrong direction. And a community that keeps watching, keeps analyzing, and keeps asking the questions that the official investigation has not answered is the only pressure that cuts through a performance built to last. Here is what this video leaves you with. If the gun was a prop, the eyes were altered, the camera removal was intentional, and the blood was placed, then what the FBI has been studying for over 2 months is not a crime scene. It is a set. And the person who built that set is someone who knew exactly how an investigation reads a scene. Someone who understood what evidence gets collected, what gets analyzed, and what narrative gets built around what is found. Someone who was close enough to this family to know the layout of that property in the dark. Someone whose walk, the one detail that no costume reaches, has been visible in the public record since the day of the memorial. So the question this community has to answer is not whether the performance was convincing. The question is, who had the intelligence, the access, and the motive to design it? Because the answer to that question has been walking in plain sight this entire time.